I often listen back to a lot of my older reviews, and after cringing due to how bad some of those videos are, I wonder if I've been too harsh on a game. Danger Girl, for example, probably wasn't as bad as I made it out to be, and I'm open to replaying it. Now, there's games like Bubsy 3D and Rambo that can fuck off until the end of time, but hindsight being what it is, I now actively try to be kinder to games, even if just with the tone of my voice or how I word certain arguments against the issues in the game. However, this ideology has come into question this past week because Clive Barker's Jericho fucking sucks. Jericho tends to walk a very thin line between sloppy yet passable and just horrible, which is why I feel a responsibility to be careful about how I word this review. Normally, the games I review are trash, but every so often there's a little good in something, and I feel like most viewers, because of how I portray a game, just write it off entirely. So let's try to keep an open mind with Jericho. Jericho was released in 2007, developed by Mercury Steam and published by Codemasters. The plot of Jericho is actually pretty damn cool. The story goes that, before the creation of Adam and Eve, God initially created a sexless, soulless being called the Firstborn. However, God was so disturbed by his creation that he abandoned it. God imprisoned the Firstborn, but it was too powerful for even God to kill, so he couldn't keep it from escaping at times and coming to this world. Every time it would come to our world and would get sent back to God's dimension, it would take a piece of this earth with it, and the two dimensions were linked by a city called Al-Kali. A rogue scientist named Arnold Leach is now looking to open the breach between dimensions and set the Firstborn free again. A Special Forces team comprising of 8 covert occult warfare specialists named the Jericho Squad has been sent to capture Leach. Jericho Squad is made up of Devin Ross, Simone Cole, Abigail Black, Paul Rawlings, Xavier Jones, Frank Delgado, and Billy Church. Ross is killed in the beginning of the game, but his soul remains and can travel into the bodies of other Jericho members. Jericho Squad ends up getting trapped inside of pocket dimensions and traveling back in time to stop Leach from reaching the Firstborn. Now, with a plot like that, you've got me on board, but Jericho, the game, doesn't do a great job of explaining all of that. Exposition is given in large chunks, and could be easily forgotten while you play the game. What doesn't help is that the characterization in the actual game, not counting the unlockables, doesn't extend beyond a trait for each character. Cole is a nerd, Rawlings is a conflicted priest, Abby is a lesbian, and Church was some sort of mental case. Although it is a modest attempt at getting you to care about these characters, the game doesn't really do it well. The dialogue is also bad and poorly executed. For example, Abigail is a lesbian, and at one point in the game, Ross travels inside of her. Delgado then makes this joke.
Hey, congratulations, Abby! Now you finally know what it's like to have a man inside you.
Fuck you.
Now, that's still sort of funny, but the writing seems juvenile and forced, and what could have been a hilarious joke is now just a chuckle. Plot and characters are really the least of Jericho's problems, because this gameplay is god-awful. I haven't seen a game of its respective genre so poorly designed since Velvet Assassin. First off, let's just say it. Jericho completely fails as a horror game. The only time I felt Jericho could have been mildly creepy was with its introduction of the Firstborn, but that thing is barely in the game and winds up sucking anyways. Besides that, Jericho features grotesque-looking enemies and a lot of blood, none of which are scary in the slightest bit. You being able to mow everything down with a minigun or just blow it up also minimalizes the fear quite a bit. Part of what works with horror games like Outlast is that you're defenseless. You're going around an environment and you can't defend yourself. Now, Jericho is a first-person shooter, but scary FPS games have also been done well, my favorite example being Fear. It's quite obvious that Jericho never got it, and its attempts at horror fall flat. Jericho's combat gameplay is really what made my blood boil, because it's fucking horrible. I'm not even sure where to begin here. Maybe with the shitty level design. Levels are 100% linear and offer nothing for exploration. Even if you wanted to explore these dark brown, green, red, and occasionally gold, dull, lifeless environments, you can't because there isn't a jump button. So right there, exploration is dead. You spend the entire game fighting the same goddamn fight 15 times over the course of one level, with enemies spawning endlessly and your team firing every round of ammunition they can find hidden up their ass cracks. Seriously, fuck everything here. I can't describe how monotonous it was to just stand there 7 times fighting the same enemies in the same fight, to the point where I wondered why Jericho wasn't just a rail shooter, because it behaved exactly like one. You can't jump, and moving around only gets you from generic firefight 1 to generic firefight 2, which could have been substituted by scripted movement. In fact, moving around feels like scripted movement because the movement in Jericho is garbage. Strafing left and right is sluggish, you can only look up and down so high and so low, and the mouse sensitivity settings in-game are either too fast or slightly too slow because there is no slider, there's just pre-made options. Add this onto Jericho regularly taking control of your character anyways for stupid button prompt sequences, and you have yourself a pseudo rail shooter. Now, the question is presented: why couldn't this have been a rail shooter? That's because you have 6 buffoons following you around, all of which likely couldn't have been controlled in the same way, so a game with limited movement that could have been switched to forced movement became a game with forced limited movement. Ross can switch between characters, all of which have their own abilities and weapons, but it's clear that the game stretched this concept out way too thin because only about 4 teammates have abilities worth a damn. Jones's abilities only serve to move the plot along and hardly ever affect the gameplay. Rawlings is generally useless minus his healing ability because his handguns don't work as well as everyone else's automatic weapons. My personal favorites to play as would go something like this: number 1 Cole, number 2 Church, number 3 Abigail, and number 4 Delgado. Delgado had a minigun and flame powers, which did end up being quite useful. Abigail had a grenade launcher, force push powers, and a sniper rifle that fires bullets which she can telepathically guide through the air in slow motion. Church has a firewall ability, an automatic weapon, a katana that can be a one-hit kill, and a blood ward ability that can freeze enemies in their tracks. Church became especially useful towards the end of the game, and she could have been great for stealth sequences to break up the pacing in the game, but the game never capitalizes on any of them. You can turn certain firefight situations into stealth situations with her, but they were never originally that. Easily the best member to play as is Cole. Cole has an automatic weapon, an ability that amplifies everyone's power, she can throw grenades, and she can also slow down time. You guys know how much I love slow motion in my first-person shooters, so this was actually awesome for a bit, until it became a necessity due to how repetitive the gameplay got. Repetition is a huge problem in this game, and it contributes to why I really disliked the firefights. When you shoot an enemy, sometimes one spawns right in his place a second or two later, and it seemingly never ends. Seriously, these encounters can go on for at least 5 minutes at a time, and it left me speechless. A large part of the reason that the repetition is such an issue is because of this game's horrible AI. The AI in this game is the shits. with enemies running at you, begging you to shoot them. They're all bullet sponges. Stupid AI isn't just contained to the enemies, because the teammate AI is almost just as bad. You spend most of the time reviving your teammates because they're constantly getting downed. There were several times where I'd revive someone, and they'd continue fighting out in the open without moving to cover. And even when they're in cover, they get inexplicably downed. If there's any game where the importance of a lean feature needed to be stressed, it's this one, because, say it with me, cover systems suck. It's definitely worth mentioning that you can command certain teammates to go certain places, and it does work very well at times, but sometimes they don't listen to you at all. The worst is when they're bunched together and all die at the same time in the same spot. Something I found hilarious is that the stupid AI is made even dumber by baffling level design. Sometimes in tight areas, enemies will come out of nowhere and hack everyone to pieces. And then there's various times where the enemies will be at the end of a long, narrow corridor and you'll kill them all before they can make it anywhere near you. That design decision was so stupid, my head almost morphed into a question mark as I wondered why anyone would design an enemy encounter like that. My experience with Jericho's combat was horrible to say the least. It's like every aspect complements an equally shitty aspect, and normally when a game would be made better, in this case, it's made far, far worse. Which sucks because Jericho had potential. And even though I just spewed a whole lot of venom its way, I really wanted to like this game. The concept is really cool, thanks to Clive Barker, and I think there was potential here to tell a great story and blend it in with great gameplay. Sadly, that wasn't in the cards for Jericho for a number of reasons. Jericho had a troubled development cycle due to some issues between Codemasters and Mercury Steam. It was also Mercury Steam's first FPS game. Jericho did end up selling 1 million units over the course of about 3 years, but it ultimately didn't work. Mercury Steam is doing fine now though, as they've done the Castlevania Lord of the Shadows games. And an interesting note about Jericho is that it appeared in Playboy's 2007 Women of Gaming spread featuring Abigail and Church. Clearly, Jericho had potential to be really good, and it's important for me to point out that a lot of people do think it's amazing, so if you ever see it and it interests you, I say go for it. To me, Jericho fails entirely on a gameplay level, to the point where I may upload a supercut of all the times I had to revive my stupid teammates, but there were spots here and there that I really liked. You know, it's at times like these that I wished I had a numbered rating system, because they're a lot better at expressing my exact feelings about a game. Now, for anyone wondering, I'd probably give Jericho a 3 out of 10, although if you placed me in any of those horrible combat sequences again, I'd probably just give it a 2. For my official video score, Jericho gets the final rating of a very gentle bullshit.
I'm sorry I brought you into this. You deserve better. Would you like to pray with me?
I'm an atheist, sir.
I guess not then.